Clemson basketball is finally here. And I have to say, this is a season I've looked forward to more than perhaps any in the Coach Brownell era. A couple of reasons for that. Obviously, the football program having a historically bad season, maybe the worst since 1998 Tommy West. We'll see how that ends. But so, there's just that anxiousness to get on to the next thing there. But also Coach Brownell has really gone all in on this season, bringing in veterans, fifth year, sixth year guys to really build out this team, replace what they lost. And I think they're in line for what should be kind of a cash-in season. If they don't make the tournament this year, really probably not making it next year. So this really feels like the year for Clemson to do something big. But before we preview that, I think it's good to give a little background and just kind of remind ourselves where we've been last year, the couple years before that. And I think that helps us preview the season. So let's do that here. So this is the entire 13-year tenure of Coach Brownell at Clemson. This is the final KenPom ranking. You see that his first year, that was the year they made the tournament. It was with Oliver Purnell's players. They beat UAB in a playing game, lost in the first round. But you see they were a good team, top 25 or the 25th ranked team, according to KenPom. A lot of the talent trickled out after that. Really steep decline. Took them a while to build back up. And then, of course, in 2017-18 had the very memorable year where they went to the Sweet 16, beat Auburn in the round of 32, nearly beat Kansas to reach an Elite Eight, one of Clemson's better teams of all time. And they were good the next year, but they declined pretty clearly from there. And last year, despite a really hot start to ACC play, KenPom was never really high on them, never really believed in them. And in the end, KenPom was right. So last year they were 23-11, 14-6 in regular season ACC play, which sounds really good. Those are some high win totals, but they did it in part because of a fortunate schedule. They had a pretty lucky break in ACC scheduling, getting Boston College twice, getting Louisville twice, but they didn't take advantage necessarily. They picked up some bad losses, and that was the risk in having a weaker schedule. Is you got to take care of business. They had a really weak non-conference schedule as well. And in non-conference, they lost to South Carolina, who ended up being horrible. They lost to Loyola Chicago, same program that made those great runs, but they were pretty bad. Not pretty bad. They were quite bad last year. And then they lost in the ACC to at Boston College and at Louisville. So those four losses, it's strange because in the way they do it, the really, really good wins and the really, really bad losses seem to count double or triple. Whereas sort of the run-of-the-mill games, you take care of business and stack up wins, they sort of get glossed over. So Clemson did have some wins against NCAA tournament teams. They beat Penn State, which was a really solid win, their best of the non-conference. They beat NC State at home. They beat them on the road, and they beat them in the ACC tournament. They beat Pittsburgh, and they beat Duke. Part of the issue was they beat Duke on January 14th. They didn't beat any other unique NCAA tournament teams after that. They beat NC State two more times at the end of the year, but no other unique wins over NCAA tournament teams. So 1, 2, 3, 4 different NCAA tournament teams they beat, but NC State they beat 3 times. So it was a year where they were bad at the beginning. Non-conference play, it seemed like you almost give up, and then they went on a run. Once ACC play started, they reached 7-0 before finally losing on the road to Wake Forest. They didn't collapse after that. They got to 10-1, and then they collapsed. They lost 3 in a row. They lost 4 out of 5. And even despite that, they had a chance to make the tournament if they could go on the road and beat Virginia. They didn't do that. They came home. They beat Notre Dame. They beat NC State in the ACC tournament. And then they faced Virginia again. And a lot of the thought was, okay, you get redemption. Go beat Virginia now. And they got completely obliterated, lost by 20. And that was sort of it. I personally think it was ridiculous that NC State made it over them, but I didn't think it was ridiculous that Clemson didn't make the tournament. What added insult to injury after that was they went to the NIT and they promptly lost to a not great Morehead State team in the first round. Morehead State was the 237th ranked team, according to KenPom, at the conclusion of the year. They lost by 18 to UAB in their second round game of the NIT. So really bad finish for Clemson and really kind of sours fans, and rightfully so, on the season overall. So hard to look at it as a total success. I mean, they didn't make the NCAA tournament, and that's really a big goal. So here is their past postseason success. You could see they've won 3 postseason games in 4 years, 3 ACC tournament games. That's it. The year before that, of course, was the NCAA tournament run. So as we come into this year, my goal for the team is to make the NCAA tournament and to have some postseason success. Now, that might be in the ACC tournament with a big run there, maybe a championship there, with something the school's never done, or some NCAA tournament postseason wins. That's really alluded to Clemson. So with that set as the goal, let's talk about the team and what they lost first. So Hunter Tyson, you could argue he's the team's best player. He's gone. He's on the Denver Nuggets. You think of PJ Hall as the star player, and you certainly run the offense through PJ Hall, whereas Hunter Tyson is more of the Scottie Pippen of the team. But in terms of efficiency, in terms of just output last year, because Hall wasn't 100% healthy, Hunter Tyson was the guy. Interestingly, in Coach Brownell's season preview press conference, he mentioned that Hunter Tyson had a dominant personality and is not afraid of confrontation. And that's something that's missing. So you think of team chemistry, guys are going to have to step up as leaders. Also missing is Brevin Galloway. Brevin Galloway was good on defense. And while he wasn't a great three-point shooter, and I often kind of joked that he was a chucker, like George Costanza from Seinfeld, and he was, he still managed to shoot 32.7% from three. So not a horrible shooter by any means, and certainly a guy that will be missed both on offense and especially on defense. And then Ben Middlebrooks. Ben Middlebrooks was a bench guy, center, but he was a good offensive rebounder, and that was a weakness for Clemson. So they lose him, and they need help on offensive rebounding as it is. Coach Brownell noted in that season preview press conference that they're a good defensive rebounding team. They were last year. He would take that in a heartbeat, but they got to get better as a offensive rebounding team. Looking at conference games only, they were 14th out of the 15 ACC teams in offensive rebounding percentage, but on defense, they were second among the 15 ACC teams. So need to be more aggressive hitting the offensive glass, but if they can keep it up on defense, that'll be a strength. So they lost 3 guys, but who do they gain? And this is what's so exciting. They add several veterans. So they add Joe Girard. He's kind of a volume shooter, but he makes him at a great clip. 38.1% three-point shooter, kind of a no conscious, I'm gonna chuck it kind of like Galloway, but it's so efficient that you invite that 100% of the time. He's gonna need to learn man-to-man defense because he's been playing in Boeheim's 2-3 zone for his whole career, but for 4 years. But assuming he can do that and not get too fatigued in a way that hinders his offense, he could be a key scorer and one of the 2 best players on Clemson. He made more threes last year than anyone on Clemson, including Hunter Tyson made. He was an academic honor roll player, and he's a 5th-year player who's using that COVID waiver. So that's a huge addition. LSU really wanted him. Clemson's got him. He's going to be the starting shooting guard. Big addition there. They also add Jack Clark. Coach Brownell said he will have a good season if he can get healthy and get reps with the team in practice. I was really encouraged to see him play a good bit against Newberry in the exhibition. He had a hernia this offseason, so he hasn't really practiced much with the team. Good to see he's able to get out there and play. I think that is a big win for the Tigers if he's able to not miss any games. He shot below 30% from 3 last year. He's not going to be a big-time shooter, especially from the outside. He's going to give you good defense. He can score, say, 9-10 points a game, mostly on the inside. He's a 6th-year guy. He played several years at LaSalle before going to NC State. So this is actually his 3rd team. But, if he can get 9-10 points a game, 6 or so rebounds and play great defense, that's what you want. That's a guy that's really going to help replace the defense you lose with Braden Galloway. Clemson also added Jake Heidbreder from Air Force. He shot nearly 40% from 3, made 75 three-pointers last year, which would have been second on Clemson behind only Hunter Tyson. Averaged 15.1 points per game. He didn't play much in the exhibition against Newberry, didn't score, and there've been kind of rumors, is he going to redshirt? And I don't know if he will. I guess it could depend on how healthy guys like Jack Clark are. and injuries along the way. But what's interesting is there's just not a ton of room for him because Alex Hemingway, a senior, is back off the bench, a shooter, kind of a similar mold player. So it might make sense for him to redshirt, but the urgency is there. So if they need to pull the red shirt, they will. I just don't know what the plan is for him. He's a true junior. And while you think Mountain West ACC, there's going to be a big transition period, Clemson played a weak schedule overall last year, both in non-conference and in the ACC. So, when you compare those, according to KenPom, the schedules are pretty much a wash. So I don't know that it's going to be a huge adjustment for him, but we'll see how big of a role he plays. I'm hesitant to say it's a big role. Lastly, Ben Middlebrooks left through the portal. He went to NC State, so Clemson grabbed Bass Light from UNC Greensboro, somewhat of a similar player. Bass Light is a fifth-year player, and something that I just really appreciate about Coach Brownell, and it's one of the reasons I just pull for him so much, is he's just so honest. He's so forthright. He doesn't give you garbage coach speak or hype guys unnecessarily only to disappoint you. In his season preview presser, he said that Bass Light, he might lack some athleticism, but he's going to be a big body, so come and rebound, play a limited role, but help the team in that role, kind of backfilling Ben Middlebrooks. He's a fifth-year player who wants to come in the ACC and get that experience and one day be a coach. And so that's exactly the role you should expect him in, and I think that's a role he'll thrive in. Nice add for Clemson to just fill in that last spot there. And then, of course, they did add one freshman, so it wasn't all transfers. They added the 6'7", 185-pound freshman out of Illinois. Brownell compared him to a young Hunter Tyson. Said he was physically not quite ready, but he has a quiet confidence and does some things that surprise you. I don't think he'll play a huge role, but gives Clemson some more depth in the front court, where I think they're pretty strong already. So with all that being said, the projected lineup looks something like this. PJ Hall starting at center, finally a healthy offseason. Chase Hunter mentioned that he wasn't 100% healthy, and it wasn't healthy might not be the word, but when he was back, he hadn't gotten his legs back. He was rehabbing the whole time, so he wasn't playing, wasn't exercising in the same way that he otherwise would have been. So that's why he was on limited minutes for so long. And this year he's healthy. Coach Brownell talked about how they don't have to play around his weakness on defense. They had to be a little bit careful about pick and roll defense with him because he didn't have that speed, didn't have his legs under him. Now he does, right? So PJ Hall, we're going to get PJ Hall at 100%, pending, hopefully he can stay healthy. Ian Shefflin is a guy who broke into the starting lineup last year, and that really helped Clemson get going after kind of that poor non-conference start. He's now got more experience and is going to be the starting power forward. I think he's a great passer already. If he could be a little bit more consistent as a scorer, that's a great front court with Shefflin and Hall. Then you have in the wing, you have Joe Girard definitely starting at the shooting guard. He's going to be a big-time scorer. And you have probably Chauncey Wiggins, at least at the start of the year, starting. He's a guy who emerged as the year went on, didn't post gaudy stats, but has a lot of upside. And you saw at times. He's 6'10", but despite being 6'10", is built more like a wing because he's a skinny guy who's going to shoot. But Jack Clark's going to get plenty of minutes as he gets healthy. I could even see Jack Clark eventually starting. Jack Clark has much more experience. So those two guys give you some good depth there. And, of course, you also have Alex Hemingway off the bench, who's kind of a dead-eye shooter. And then Chase Hunter's the point guard. He returns. Brownell mentioned that he's a quiet guy, and with Hunter Tyson leaving, they've kind of put the expectation on Chase Hunter to become more of a leader. They even send him to leadership seminars and stuff over the offseason. Big season for Chase Hunter to him and Hall, kind of really him, Hall, and Joe Girard to be sort of the trio of players to lead Clemson back to the NCAA tournament. Off the bench, one other guy worth mentioning. Well, a couple guys worth mentioning, but one in particular is R.J. Godfrey, sort of the reverse of Chauncey Wiggins. He's 6'7", so 3 inches shorter than Wiggins, but 20 pounds heavier. He's tough in the post. If he can develop his shooting touch, in addition to that, he could be a really, really plus guy off the bench this year and probably a starter next season. Also, backup point guards Dylan Hunter and Josh Beadle will provide the backup duty for Chase Hunter and likely to some extent Joe Girard as well. Beadle got in a car accident this offseason, broke his nose, got a concussion. I thought he might miss the start of the year, but he played some in the exhibition. So, he might be kind of on the Jack Clark plan of kind of getting worked in and building his minutes as the season goes on. So really a great roster. A couple things to keep in mind is Shefflin looking to improve as a scorer, particularly as a three-point shooter. He only attempted 27 3-pointers last year, shot him in an okay clip, but just wasn't a big-time shooter, made a third of them, made 9 of 27. But we'll see if that grows. So let's look at the schedule. Really, really tough non-conference schedule this year. Last year was a very, very poor non-conference schedule, as I mentioned. This year, they learned from their mistakes, and that's all you can ask from a coach and from a program. They learned from their mistakes, and they went out and they scheduled a really tough non-conference schedule, knowing that you're better off scheduling tough and losing a couple than scheduling soft and even losing one or two, right? Losing those 2 games to South Carolina and Loyola Chicago doomed them. They've set themselves up to probably maybe not even win as many games, but still come out ahead of where they were last year. So looking at the non-conference schedule, they've got 7, potentially 8, depending if they play Maryland in the Asheville Championship. Teams that are in the top 100. And that's out of, 7 or 8 out of 11 non-conference games. So, their only cupcakes, if you will, are Alcorn State, Queens, and Radford. And Radford's 168, so I don't even know if that's a cupcake. Winthrop 161. So there's essentially 4 teams they'll play that aren't major challengers. Everyone else is going to be a big challenge. UAB is tough. They play them in Asheville. Boise State's at home. They were a tournament team. They're going to be tough. Alabama on the road is a top 10 team according to KenPom. Extremely tough challenge. They get Pittsburgh in his ACC game mixed in there. South Carolina comes to Clemson this year, but they're expected to be much better, so that's no pushover. They play TCU in Toronto, and they go to Memphis. 2 really tough games. So if Clemson can get out of non-conference with, let's say, a 7-4 record, last year they were 8-3. I think 7-4 would put them ahead of where they were last year. I don't think there's really any question about it. So it's going to be some learning curve as these guys gel, but they don't have to be perfect like they sort of had to be last year. So that's the good thing. Hey, if you're enjoying this video, please subscribe to this channel. I appreciate everyone who's already done so. If you are a subscriber, please like this video as well. All right, let's talk about the ACC slate. Clemson gets I would say, a normal draw from the ACC. They play Georgia Tech twice. They play Florida State twice, as they always do. They're the annual rivals. They also play Pittsburgh twice, UNC twice, Miami twice, and Syracuse twice. So those are not going to be easy. Pittsburgh, of course, solid team. They play them, as part of that weird non-conference. They always mix in one ACC game, but then they play them again late. They're ranked 62 in KenPom, so that's no pushover. Miami lost some key guys, including Isaiah Wong, but they were a Final Four team last year, so that's a tough one to play twice. UNC hasn't been quite, lived up to the name lately, but it's North Carolina. You're going to have to go to Chapel Hill as one of them. That's tough. So I would say a normal ACC schedule, nothing, they don't go to Virginia and Duke twice or anything crazy like that, but they also don't get the draw they had last year where they're getting maybe the 3 weakest teams in the conference twice. So that sets them up for a overall challenging schedule. KenPom projects them at 18-12, 12-8 in the ACC. Frankly, that's not going to cut it. That's probably going to miss. Not probably. That's going to miss the NCAA tournament if that's what they do. And frankly, that's a failure where you got to re-look at the whole program, because this is the payoff here. As I said at the start, they need to make the tournament. They need to win multiple postseason games, not one of these seasons where they win one ACC tournament game and then they lose, and they lose immediately upon going to NIT or NCAA. That's not what we're looking for this year. That's not okay this year. This year is set up to be the payoff for all those years of that where we've been waiting and building to this. And I think they could do much better. I look at their schedule, and yeah, there's some games they're probably not going to win. They're probably not going to win at UNC. They're probably not going to win at Duke. I don't see them, going 9 or 10 wins in the non-conference play, but they don't have to, right? This is a team that could be like a 9 seed in the NCAA tournament. If they can even approach the 23 wins they had last year, they'll be in easily because the schedule is so much better, especially the non-conference. Last year, Nevada was an 11 seed. They lost a playing game to Arizona State. They were 22-11, right? And so you look at, you've improved the schedule so much. Can Clemson get to 21, 22, 23 type win season? I think it's very possible. Step one is get out of non-conference play with 7 or more wins. Avoid, the really terrible losses. So that's basically saying don't lose to Alcorn State or Queens. Avoid those losses. And if you're going to get 7 wins, you're going to pick up a couple really good ones, whether that's Boise State at home, TCU in Toronto. Can you come away with a crazy good win? Alabama on the road, Memphis on the road? Maybe, but even if they don't, if they could pick up 7, there'll be some good wins along the way, just by virtue of how hard that schedule is. And the really tough stretch comes after Thanksgiving. They go to Alabama, they go to Pittsburgh, they come home for South Carolina, they go to Toronto for TCU, and then they go to Memphis to play the Memphis Tigers. They could just win 2 of those 5 games. They'll probably go 7-4, maybe better. So they could go 7-4, and then they can go 13-7 in ACC play. That's a game worse in non-conference play than last year, a game worse in ACC play than last year. They'll be sitting at 20 wins, and that's when it's time. Go pick up 2 wins in the ACC tournament, lock it up. I think they could do it this year. It's been a lot of waiting, a lot of patience, and I think this is the year. I think this is the year they return to the NCAA tournament. Hard to predict they're going to win because you don't know how healthy they are. You don't know who they're going to play, but I think there's a lot of reason to be excited. So they start off with Winthrop right after the Clemson's Notre Dame game. They play them on Monday, and then you're off. You're off with some really exciting games after that. So if you're sick of watching some losses in football, if you're excited just for Clemson basketball for what it is, either way, be sure to tune in. Thanks for watching. Again, if you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe, hit the like, check out the thanks feature we've added to the channel. Thanks for watching. I always appreciate everyone who watches, and I especially appreciate folks who are ready for basketball. I know these don't always get the views that the football ones do, so I doubly so appreciate you watching. Thanks, and as always, go Tigers.